37 faces. I count them twice, my thumb scrolling through photo after photo on my phone screen. My sister Jessica, glowing in a yellow sundress, surrounded by everyone who matters in our family. Aunts I haven't seen since Christmas. Mom's book club friends. Even old Mrs. Patterson from down the street, who Jessica complains about constantly. Everyone except me. The baby shower happened yesterday, 2 blocks from my apartment, while I was working a double shift at the hospital, thinking Jessica was having a quiet weekend at home. My coffee sits forgotten on the kitchen counter, steam rising into the morning light that suddenly feels too bright, too exposing. The group chat keeps pinging with more photos, more thank you messages, more proof that I've been deliberately erased from my own family. Jessica's voice note auto-plays from the latest message. Thank you all for making yesterday so perfect. Having everyone who truly matters there meant the world to me. Everyone who truly matters. My name is Nancy Thompson. I'm 28 years old, and until this moment, I thought I knew where I stood with my family. I'm a pediatric physical therapist at Denver Children's Hospital, the same person who spent 8 months teaching Jessica's 4-year-old daughter, Emma, how to walk again after her accident. The same sister who used her entire savings to help Jessica buy her first house. The same sister who apparently doesn't matter enough for a baby shower invitation. I set the phone face down on the granite counter, but it keeps buzzing. More photos, more celebration, more evidence of my exclusion playing out in real time. The children in the courtyard below are laughing, their voices drifting through my kitchen window like an echo of the joy I wasn't invited to share. I can see their mothers watching them, protective and loving, and I wonder what Jessica told people about my absence yesterday. I pick up my phone again, scrolling back through the photos one more time. That's when I notice something that makes my blood run cold. Emma is in several of the pictures, wearing the special shoes I bought her for physical therapy. The same shoes she needed because of the accident that nearly took her ability to walk forever. The same accident that I spent every day for 8 months helping her recover from. But in every caption, every thank you post, every glowing comment about Emma's progress, my name appears exactly 0 times. Sitting in my kitchen, staring at the evidence of my erasure, I realize Jessica has made one crucial mistake. She has no idea that I've been recording our mother's phone calls for the past 6 months, including the one where they planned exactly how to exclude me from this shower without looking like the bad guys. Let me back up and explain how I got here, staring at photos of a family celebration that happened without me. My name is Nancy Thompson, and I'm the middle child in what everyone calls a close-knit family. My older brother Marcus is a corporate lawyer in downtown Denver, the kind who bills $400 an hour and drives a Tesla. Jessica is my younger sister, 2 years behind me, who works in marketing for a tech startup and just announced her second pregnancy. Then there's me, the pediatric physical therapist who chose helping kids walk again over making 6 figures. The one who always shows up when someone needs help, who always says yes when family calls. Our parents are Dr. Linda Thompson, a pediatrician who runs her own practice, and Robert Thompson, a civil engineer who designs water treatment systems. On paper, we look like the perfect American family, successful, educated, supportive. The reality is more complicated. I learned early that my role in this family was to be the fixer. When Jessica had her breakdown during her first pregnancy 3 years ago, guess who moved into her spare room for 3 months? When Dad had his heart attack last year, who took unpaid leave to coordinate his care while Marcus was too busy with a big case, and Jessica was too emotionally fragile to handle medical decisions? That would be me, every time. The pattern started when we were kids. Jessica would break something, I'd take the blame to keep her out of trouble. Marcus would forget to do his chores, I'd cover for him so he wouldn't lose his video game privileges. I told myself I was being a good sister, keeping peace in the house. What I was actually doing was teaching them that Nancy would always sacrifice herself for everyone else's comfort. The biggest sacrifice came 2 years ago. I'd been accepted into a pediatric rehabilitation fellowship at Boston Children's Hospital. It was everything I'd worked toward. The chance to study with the best therapists in the country, develop new techniques for helping kids with mobility issues, maybe even do research that could change lives. But Jessica was struggling with postpartum depression, and Mom said she needed family support nearby. Boston will always be there, Mom told me over dinner at their house. But Jessica needs you now. Family comes first, Nancy. So I turned down Boston. I stayed in Denver. I threw myself into building my career at Children's Hospital here, telling myself I was making a difference locally. Jessica recovered from her depression. She went back to work. She and her husband bought a beautiful house in the suburbs with help from a down payment I provided. $23,000 from my fellowship fund that would now never be used for Boston. "I'll pay you back," Jessica promised, signing the loan paperwork at the kitchen table, "once we're settled and my promotion comes through." That was 18 months ago. The promotion came through. The payback never did. Instead, Jessica got pregnant again, and suddenly she needed help with Emma while dealing with morning sickness. She needed someone to watch Emma during doctor appointments. She needed someone to pick up Emma from preschool when work ran late. That someone was always me. Don't get me wrong, I love Emma. She's my niece and she's incredible. But there's something particularly twisted about the fact that I've become Emma's primary backup caregiver while being excluded from family celebrations, especially since I'm the reason Emma can walk at all. The accident happened 8 months ago. Emma darted into the street chasing a ball while Jessica was distracted by her phone. The car couldn't stop in time. Emma's left leg was crushed, her hip dislocated, her ankle shattered. The doctors at Children's Hospital were honest with Jessica and her husband. Emma might not ever walk normally again. The damage was extensive. Traditional physical therapy might help, but the chances of full recovery were slim. That's when I stepped in. I'd been developing new techniques for pediatric trauma recovery, methods I'd learned from conferences I attended on my own time with my own money. I volunteered to work with Emma personally, using approaches that weren't part of the hospital standard protocol yet. 8 months of sessions, 3 times a week, 8 months of designing custom exercises, researching new equipment, staying late to work with Emma when she was scared or frustrated. 8 months of my own unpaid time, my own emotional investment, my own professional reputation on the line. Emma made a full recovery. Not just walking, but running, jumping, playing like nothing had ever happened. The breakthrough made me locally famous in Denver's pediatric community. Other hospitals started asking about my techniques. Medical journals wanted to feature Emma's case. I was invited to present at conferences across the country.
But if you ask Jessica, Emma's recovery was due to the power of love and our family's strength. My professional contribution got reduced to Nancy helped where she could. The pattern of minimizing my role while maximizing the benefits became so routine, I stopped noticing it. Jessica would tell people that Emma recovered because of their family's positive attitude and Emma's own determination. I was just the therapist who happened to be related to them. Meanwhile, Jessica borrowed my professional wardrobe for job interviews. She used my contacts in the medical community for networking opportunities. She asked me to write recommendation letters for positions she wanted, using my credentials to open doors she couldn't access on her own. And I did it all, because that's what family does, right? We support each other. At family dinners, when I'd try to share news about my work or my patient's progress, Jessica would interrupt. "Speaking of kids," she'd say, turning to Mom, "Emma said the funniest thing yesterday." And suddenly the conversation would shift to Jessica's parenting stories while my professional achievements disappeared into the background. Mom and Dad never corrected this. If anything, they encouraged it. Mom would praise Jessica's practical approach to motherhood while describing my work as emotionally demanding and probably exhausting. Like helping kids walk again was some kind of burden rather than a calling. Dad was more subtle, but no less damaging. He'd ask about my little patients in a tone that made my life-changing work sound like babysitting. But he could talk for hours about Marcus's latest legal victory or Jessica's marketing campaigns. The engagement to Alex 2 years ago should have changed things. Alex Martinez is a respiratory therapist at Presbyterian Hospital.
someone who understands the medical field and respects my work. His parents are traditional, the kind of people who value family loyalty and expect their son's wife to have her own family support. When Alex and I announced our engagement at Sunday dinner, their response was telling. Marcus gave us a perfunctory congratulations before immediately shifting the conversation to his latest case. Mom asked if we'd set a date, then suggested we wait until Jessica had her second baby so she could fully participate in wedding planning. Jessica hugged me and said all the right things, but then asked if I could postpone the engagement party because she was too sick with morning sickness to help plan it. So we postponed, and postponed, and postponed again. My wedding planning got pushed aside so I could help Jessica through her difficult pregnancy. My bridal shower got delayed because Jessica needed help moving into a larger house. My bachelorette party never happened because Jessica was too tired to organize it. Alex started asking questions I couldn't answer. Why did my family's needs always come before our relationship? Why did I constantly drop our plans to help Jessica with Emma or household emergencies? "You're a grown woman, Nancy," Alex said after I canceled our anniversary dinner to babysit Emma during another of Jessica's pregnancy complications. "You don't have to say yes to everything." But I did have to say yes, because if I didn't, I'd be the selfish sister who put her own needs above family. I'd be the one who let Jessica struggle while I enjoyed my perfect life. Except my life wasn't perfect. It was a series of sacrifices that nobody acknowledged, wrapped in a family dynamic that made me feel guilty for wanting anything for myself. The breaking point should have been when Jessica asked me to give up my spare bedroom to store her baby furniture. "Just temporarily," she promised, "until we get the nursery organized." My spare bedroom was my home office, the place where I wrote conference presentations, researched new techniques, and planned treatment protocols for my patients. It was the only space in my apartment that was entirely mine. But Jessica was 7 months pregnant and stressed about storage space. So I moved my desk into the living room, packed up my files, and turned my sanctuary into a warehouse for baby cribs and changing tables. The furniture is still there. Jessica's baby isn't due for another month, but somehow she never found time to organize the nursery. Instead, she found time to plan an elaborate baby shower and invite everyone except the person who'd given up her personal space, her professional opportunities, and her emotional energy to support Jessica's family. Looking back at those photos on my phone, I finally understand the truth I'd been too loyal to see. I thought being the family fixer would make me indispensable. I was about to learn that some people see reliability as weakness to exploit.
The discovery hit me like a physical blow. There I was, scrolling through Instagram at 7 a.m. on a Sunday, still in my scrubs from another double shift, when Jessica's baby shower photos flooded my feed. Not just a few pictures, an entire album. Professional photography, elaborate decorations, a cake that probably cost more than I spend on groceries in a month, 37 people celebrating Jessica's pregnancy while I was at the hospital, thinking she was having a quiet weekend at home. I'd asked her about shower plans 2 weeks earlier when I dropped off Emma after babysitting. "Are you doing anything special before the baby comes?" Jessica had shrugged, one hand resting on her 7-month bump. "Mom mentioned maybe doing something low-key. Just immediate family, nothing fancy." Nothing fancy? I stared at the photos of the elaborate floral arrangements, the custom backdrop with Jessica's name in gold letters, the professional dessert table that looked like something from a magazine. I called Mom immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed. "Nancy?" Her voice carried that familiar note of mild irritation, like I was interrupting something important. "Is everything all right? It's very early." "There was a baby shower for Jessica yesterday." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Why wasn't I invited?" A weighted pause, then a sigh that conveyed exactly how tedious she found this conversation. "Oh, that. Well, Jessica felt you might make it about yourself. You have a tendency to dominate conversations with your work stories, and she wanted the focus to stay on her and the baby." The words landed like slaps. Make it about myself? Dominate conversations? When have I ever? Please don't start, Nancy. This is exactly the kind of reaction Jessica was worried about. The day went beautifully without any drama. Without any drama, meaning without me. I hung up and called Jessica directly. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. When she finally called back 3 hours later, her voice was clipped and impatient. Nancy, I can't deal with this right now. I'm exhausted from yesterday and I have things to do. Jessica, I just want to understand. The sharp click of her hanging up cut through my apartment like a gunshot. I spent the rest of that Sunday reviewing recent family interactions with new clarity, like examining old photographs and finally noticing details that had been there all along. Jessica's birthday dinner 3 weeks ago, I'd mentioned a breakthrough with one of my patients, a little boy who'd taken his first steps after spinal surgery. Jessica rolled her eyes so dramatically that Dad chuckled. Here we go with the miracle worker stories again, Jessica said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Nancy always has to be the hero. I'd felt my face flush with embarrassment, but Mom had just smiled and changed the subject to Jessica's pregnancy cravings. The conversation moved on like my work didn't matter, like helping a child walk again was somehow self-aggrandizing rather than professional success. The gender reveal party 2 months ago, Jessica claimed it was just girlfriends, but the photos showed male coworkers, family friends, even our elderly neighbor, Mr. Patterson. When I mentioned feeling left out, Jessica said she'd forgotten to invite me because she was pregnancy brain scattered. Family group chats followed the same pattern. Whenever I shared news about my patients or professional recognition, the chat would go silent. But Jessica's updates about pregnancy symptoms or Emma's preschool achievements would generate dozens of responses and heart emojis. I started paying attention to other interactions too. When I returned Jessica's borrowed blouse, a designer piece she'd needed for a job interview, I found her house empty, windows dark, cars gone from the driveway. She'd been home when I texted that I was coming by, but somehow vanished between my message and my arrival 30 minutes later.
My voicemail messages to family members started going unanswered. Not just delayed responses, but complete radio silence. I'd leave messages about Emma's therapy progress or ask about coordinating Dad's follow-up cardiology appointment, and get nothing back for days. The pattern was so consistent it couldn't be coincidental. I was being systematically excluded from family communication while still being expected to provide unpaid labor whenever needed. But what Jessica did during Emma's recovery celebration revealed a level of selfishness I'd never imagined and showed me exactly how she viewed my sacrifices. The hospital had organized a small celebration for Emma's full recovery, inviting the medical team that had worked on her case. It was a proud moment for everyone involved. The surgeons who'd repaired her injuries, the nurses who'd provided care, and me, the therapist who'd guided her through 8 months of intensive rehabilitation. Emma was thriving, running, jumping, playing like the accident had never happened. The doctors called it a textbook example of innovative therapy techniques producing exceptional results. Emma arrived halfway through the celebration, swept Emma into her arms, and spent 20 minutes talking to reporters about the power of maternal love and never giving up on your child. She gave interviews about Emma's journey without mentioning my role once. She posed for photos with the medical team while positioning herself as the driving force behind Emma's recovery. When a journalist asked about the therapy process, Jessica said, "We found the best doctors and never lost hope. Love heals everything." I stood there watching my professional achievement get erased in real time, replaced by Jessica's narrative of devoted motherhood conquering medical challenges. After the reporters left, Jessica approached me with tears in her eyes. "Nancy, I'm so sorry about the shower. I've been hormonal and stressed, and I made a terrible mistake." She looked genuinely distraught, her voice breaking as she continued. "I need your support now more than ever. The pregnancy has been so difficult, and I can't do this without my sister." She begged me to help plan the baby's nursery, promising to make everything right between us. "We're family," she said, gripping my hands. "I don't want to lose you over something so stupid." I wanted to believe her. Despite everything, I wanted to believe my sister still cared about our relationship. So I spent the next 2 weekends at Jessica's house, painting the nursery walls a soft yellow, assembling furniture, arranging decorations according to her Pinterest boards. Jessica seemed genuinely grateful, even emotional, about my dedication to helping her prepare for the baby. "You're the best sister anyone could ask for," she said, hugging me after we finished hanging the mobile above the crib. "I'm so lucky to have you." For those 2 weeks, I thought we'd reconciled. I thought the shower exclusion had been a hormone-driven mistake, a temporary lapse in judgment that we'd worked through together. I was wrong. The truth came out through my colleague Sarah, a pediatric occupational therapist who'd worked with Emma during her recovery. We were grabbing coffee after a particularly difficult day when she mentioned seeing photos from a party. "I saw the pictures from Jessica's second shower on Facebook. It looked incredible. The venue, the photography, the decorations. I can't believe she had 2 showers. The second one was even more beautiful than the first. Didn't you help her plan those gorgeous decorations?" My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "Second shower?" Sarah's expression shifted from casual conversation to concern. Oh no. You didn't know?" The second baby shower had happened the weekend after I'd helped finish the nursery, a co-ed celebration at an upscale event venue with Jessica's husband's family, her close friends, and her professional network. Professional photography, premium catering, expensive gifts that made the first shower look modest by comparison. Jessica had organized an elaborate celebration for the people who mattered to her, while using me for free labor to prepare for it. I sat there in the coffee shop, staring at the photos Sarah showed me on her phone, and finally understood the scope of Jessica's manipulation. The tearful apology hadn't been genuine remorse. It had been a calculated move to ensure I'd continue providing unpaid services while still being excluded from meaningful events. But Sarah's expression was troubled in a way that went beyond social awkwardness. She kept glancing around the coffee shop like she was worried about being overheard. "Nancy, there's something else. Something about Jessica's story that doesn't add up. Something you need to know about what really happened during Emma's recovery."
The Rocky Mountain Pediatric Conference was supposed to be my professional triumph. 300 medical professionals from across the region gathered to learn about innovative approaches to pediatric rehabilitation, and I was the keynote speaker. My presentation focused on breakthrough techniques for pediatric trauma recovery, specifically highlighting Emma's case as an example of how specialized therapy could achieve what traditional methods couldn't. I had permission from Jessica to use Emma's story. She'd signed the releases 6 months earlier, eager to have her daughter featured in medical literature. I'd spent weeks preparing, compiling before and after videos, documenting every technique that had contributed to Emma's full recovery. The presentation wasn't about me, it was about proving that these methods could help other children facing similar injuries. The auditorium was packed. Therapists, doctors, hospital administrators, medical students. As I clicked through slides showing Emma's progress from wheelchair to full mobility, I felt the electricity of professional recognition. This was why I'd stayed in Denver, why I'd turned down Boston, to develop techniques that could change lives. Halfway through my presentation, I spotted a familiar face in the audience. Jessica, sitting in the back row next to our parents and Emma's father, Tom. My heart lifted for a moment. Maybe they'd come to support me for once. But Jessica's expression wasn't proud or supportive. Her face was tight with anger, her arms crossed defensively across her chest. Mom sat beside her with pursed lips, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. I finished the presentation to thunderous applause. Colleagues approached with questions about my techniques, requests for collaboration, invitations to speak at their hospitals. It was everything I'd worked toward. That's when Jessica struck. She intercepted me in the hospital corridor before I could reach the reception, flanked by our parents like backup in a coordinated attack.
"I can't believe you're using my daughter as your personal success story," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "Emma recovered because she's strong, not because of your techniques. Stop taking credit for my child's strength." The words hit me like physical blows. I looked around, hoping for support from our parents, but Mom was nodding approvingly. "Nancy, this is exactly the kind of attention-seeking behavior that makes family events difficult," Mom said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment. "You've turned Emma's trauma into your professional showcase." "I had your permission," I managed, my voice barely steady. "You signed the releases. You said you were proud." "I didn't realize you'd make it all about yourself," Jessica interrupted. "Emma's recovery is about our family's love and support, not your career ambitions." Tom, Emma's father, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. He'd witnessed Emma's transformation firsthand, seen the techniques I had used, but he wasn't going to contradict his wife in public. The corridor around us was full of colleagues who had attended my presentation. They were watching this family confrontation with growing confusion and discomfort. Dr. Martinez from Children's Hospital, Colorado, who'd been interested in adopting my techniques, excused himself abruptly. Dr. Peterson, who had invited me to present at her facility, suddenly seemed eager to escape. I watched my professional moment turn into personal humiliation in real time. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by 8 months of session notes with Emma. Every breakthrough carefully documented, every innovative technique detailed, every hour of unpaid overtime I'd invested in my niece's recovery laid out in meticulous professional records. Emma's first successful weight-bearing exercise, the custom equipment I'd designed specifically for her injuries, the modification of standard protocols that had accelerated her healing, the weekend sessions I'd conducted in my own apartment when the hospital wasn't available, all of it dismissed by Jessica as attention-seeking behavior. I realized this wasn't about baby showers or family dynamics anymore. This was about something much more serious. Jessica had been systematically undermining my professional reputation while benefiting from my expertise. She wanted Emma's recovery to reflect well on her mothering skills, not my medical techniques. But erasing my contribution meant erasing the very methods that could help other children. Jessica's selfishness wasn't just hurting me, it was potentially limiting medical advances that could change lives. I called Dr. Patricia Williams, my mentor from graduate school, who'd helped develop some of the techniques I'd used with Emma. Patricia had moved to Johns Hopkins but stayed connected to my work through professional publications and conferences. "Nancy," Patricia's voice was warm with excitement when I explained my presentation, "your work with Emma is groundbreaking. We've had hospitals across the country asking about your methods. The video documentation you provided is being used in training programs at 3 medical schools." "Jessica doesn't see it that way," I said, explaining the confrontation. Patricia's tone shifted from enthusiasm to shock. "Nancy, your sister should be grateful, not possessive. Emma's case is going to help thousands of children. You've developed techniques that could revolutionize pediatric trauma recovery." The conversation shifted my perspective completely. This wasn't about family relationships. It was about professional sabotage disguised as sibling rivalry. Jessica wasn't just hurting my feelings, she was actively undermining medical advances that could benefit other families facing similar traumas. Patricia continued, "I've been getting calls from insurance companies asking about coverage for your techniques. Hospital administrators want to implement your protocols. You're changing the standard of care, Nancy. Don't let anyone diminish that." After we hung up, I sat in my living room trying to process the magnitude of what Jessica was attempting. She wanted to take credit for Emma's recovery while simultaneously preventing me from sharing the techniques that made it possible.
That's when I remembered the recordings. I'd started recording family phone calls 6 months ago during Dad's cardiac episode. With so much medical information to track, doctor appointments, medication changes, insurance authorizations, I'd wanted to make sure I captured all the details correctly. Colorado is a one-party consent state, so recording my own conversations was perfectly legal. What I'd captured was far more revealing than medical information. I pulled out my laptop and started reviewing the audio files, searching for conversations about Emma's recovery and my professional work. What I found made my blood run cold. A conversation between Jessica and Mom from 3 weeks after Emma's accident. Nancy's getting too much credit for this. Jessica's voice came through clearly. People keep asking about her special techniques like she's some kind of miracle worker. Well, she is doing good work, Mom's voice replied carefully. But it's my daughter, my family story. I don't want Nancy turning Emma's trauma into her career breakthrough. What do you suggest? I'm going to start telling people that Emma's recovery is about family strength and determination. Nancy helped, but love is what really healed her. There were more recordings. Jessica talking to Emma's teachers about downplaying my role in Emma's recovery, Jessica speaking to other parents at Emma's preschool, describing me as overly invested in taking credit for children's natural resilience. Most damaging of all, a conversation between Jessica and Dr. Rodriguez, Emma's primary physician, where Jessica suggested that my techniques were unproven and that Emma's recovery was better attributed to natural healing and family support. Jessica hadn't just been undermining me socially, she'd been actively sabotaging my professional reputation with the medical community. But the recording that changed everything was one I'd almost deleted, a conversation between Jessica and Mom from 2 weeks ago, right after the first baby shower. Nancy is getting too much recognition, Jessica said. The hospital newsletter featured her work with Emma, and now she's been asked to speak at a conference. She's using my daughter to advance her career. What do you want to do about it? I want to make sure she understands that Emma's story belongs to our family, not her career. Maybe it's time Nancy learned that some achievements aren't meant to be shared. That night, listening to those recordings, I realized Jessica's campaign against me wasn't just personal, it was professional theft. She was trying to steal credit for medical innovations while simultaneously destroying my ability to share them with the broader medical community. And that gave me exactly the weapon I needed to destroy her carefully crafted image as the devoted mother whose love had conquered medical challenges. Jessica had made one crucial mistake. She committed her sabotage to recorded conversations that documented not just her malicious intent, but her willingness to undermine medical advances that could help other children. She thought she was protecting her maternal reputation. She was about to discover she'd created evidence of professional interference that could end her career and expose her as the selfish manipulator she'd always been.
The recordings were just the beginning. Over the next week, I began systematically documenting Jessica's pattern of professional sabotage, approaching the investigation with the same methodical precision I used in patient care. I started with my own professional network, reaching out to colleagues under the pretense of following up on Emma's case. What I discovered made my stomach turn. Dr. Martinez from Children's Hospital Colorado, who'd seemed interested in my techniques after the conference, had received a call from Jessica 2 days later. She wanted to make sure I understood that Emma's recovery wasn't really about specialized therapy, he told me during a carefully casual phone conversation. She said you were a loving aunt who helped where you could, but that Emma's strength and their family's support were the real factors. Jessica had contacted 3 other hospitals that had inquired about my methods, systematically undermining my professional credibility while positioning herself as the expert on her daughter's recovery. But the most damaging discovery came through Emma's pediatric surgeon, Dr. Kim, who mentioned during a routine follow-up that Jessica had suggested my post-surgical protocols were unnecessary and potentially overly aggressive for a child Emma's age. Jessica wasn't just stealing credit, she was actively sabotaging my reputation with the medical professionals who could validate and expand my techniques. I compiled everything methodically: the original reportings of family conversations, documentation of Jessica's contacts with my professional network, email screenshots from colleagues sharing Jessica's version of Emma's recovery story,
financial records showing my personal investment in Emma's specialized equipment and therapy sessions. The evidence painted a clear picture of systematic professional sabotage disguised as protective mothering. But I needed allies, people within the medical community who could corroborate what I was discovering. That's when I reached back out to Sarah Mitchell, the occupational therapist who'd first hinted that something was wrong with Jessica's story. Sarah agreed to meet me at a quiet coffee shop near Presbyterian Hospital, away from our usual professional spaces. Her face was troubled when she slid into the booth across from me. "Nancy, I've been keeping records," she said without preamble, pulling out a manila folder. "Jessica's been telling other medical professionals that your role in Emma's recovery was exaggerated. She claimed you were desperate for credit and that Emma's progress was due to natural healing and her maternal dedication." Sarah spread out documentation that made my blood run cold. Notes from conversations with Emma's physical therapy team, where Jessica had questioned my methods. Communications with Emma's school nurse, where Jessica had downplayed the severity of Emma's initial injuries to make her recovery seem less remarkable. "The problem is," Sarah continued, "Jessica's version doesn't match the clinical reality of Emma's case. I've been investigating because what she's telling people contradicts everything we documented during treatment." Sarah had been keeping her own records because Jessica's claims were so inconsistent with the medical evidence. Emma's injuries had been severe enough to require innovative intervention, the kind that Jessica was now claiming had been unnecessary. "Look at this," Sarah said, pulling out Emma's initial assessment reports. "Compound fracture, displaced hip, severe soft tissue damage. Natural healing and maternal love don't fix this level of trauma. Emma needed exactly the specialized techniques you provided." We spent 2 hours reviewing the clinical evidence, building a comprehensive timeline that documented not just Emma's recovery, but Jessica's systematic campaign to rewrite the medical narrative. With Sarah's evidence supporting my recordings, I called Dr. Patricia Williams to discuss our next move. Patricia was outraged when I explained Jessica's sabotage. "Nancy, this goes beyond family drama," Patricia said, her voice sharp with professional indignation. "Jessica is undermining medical advances that could help other children. We can't let personal jealousy prevent these techniques from reaching families who need them." We developed a comprehensive strategy. Patricia would help me prepare a detailed case study of Emma's recovery, properly crediting all therapeutic interventions and establishing my techniques as documented medical breakthroughs. We'd present this at the International Pediatric Rehabilitation Conference in Chicago, the largest gathering of specialists in our field.
But we needed more than conference presentations. We needed to expose Jessica's interference in a way that would protect other medical professionals from her manipulation. Patricia connected me with Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a medical ethicist who specialized in cases involving non-medical interference in patient care. Dr. Walsh was fascinated by the evidence I'd compiled. "What your sister is doing could be considered a form of medical interference," Dr. Walsh explained during our consultation. "She's actively undermining medically sound treatment protocols and spreading misinformation about pediatric care standards." While I was building my professional case, Jessica's arrogance was escalating. Unaware that her sabotage was being documented, she became increasingly bold in claiming credit for Emma's recovery. She started a blog called Emma's Journey, A Mother's Love Conquers All, positioning herself as the devoted parent whose unwavering faith had healed her daughter's injuries. The blog portrayed Nancy as a well-meaning family member who helped where she could, but wasn't crucial to the recovery process. While medical professionals did their jobs, one blog post read, it was the power of unconditional love that truly healed Emma's broken body. No amount of specialized therapy can replace a mother's determination to see her child whole again. Jessica's Instagram account became a platform for minimizing medical intervention while emphasizing parental dedication as the primary healing force. Posts about Emma's milestones consistently credited family strength and never giving up, while treating medical care as background support. The blog gained a following among parents of injured children, many of whom began questioning whether their own children needed the specialized therapies their doctors recommended.
Jessica was spreading dangerous misinformation that could affect other families' medical decisions. Sarah discovered the most troubling development when she called me late one evening, her voice tense with urgency. "Nancy, we have a problem. Jessica contacted the hospital ethics board." My stomach dropped. "About what?" "She's claiming you violated patient privacy by discussing Emma's case at conferences without proper authorization. She says you used her daughter's medical information to advance your career without considering the family's wishes for privacy." The accusation was both cunning and dangerous. If the ethics board believed Jessica's claims, I could face professional sanctions, even license suspension. "But I have signed releases," I protested. "I know, but Jessica's arguing that you coerced her into signing them, that she was emotionally vulnerable after Emma's accident, and you took advantage of her trust." Sarah's warning made me realize the stakes had escalated beyond professional reputation. Jessica was now actively trying to destroy my ability to practice medicine. But Sarah had discovered something even more disturbing while investigating Jessica's ethics complaint. "Nancy, Jessica wasn't just stealing credit. She was actively sabotaging your other cases. I found evidence that she's been contacting families of your other patients, questioning your methods, and suggesting they seek second opinions." The scope of Jessica's sabotage was broader than I had imagined. She wasn't just undermining my work with Emma, she was systematically attacking my entire professional practice. "And there's something else," Sarah said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "She has allies at the hospital I never suspected, people who've been feeding her information about your caseload, your patient outcomes, even your conference presentations." Our plan was solid, but Sarah's discovery changed everything. Jessica wasn't working alone. She had accomplices within the medical community, people who were helping her gather information and spread doubt about my professional competence. The family drama I thought was personal had become a coordinated professional attack, and now I knew I wasn't just fighting Jessica, I was fighting a network of people who saw my success as something that needed to be contained. The Denver Children's Hospital Annual Conference was larger this year, with nearly 400 medical professionals in attendance. Word had spread about the innovative techniques being developed locally, and administrators from hospitals across the region had come to evaluate new approaches to pediatric care. I'd been invited to present the keynote address on breakthrough therapeutic methods, specifically focusing on complex trauma cases that had achieved exceptional recovery outcomes. Emma's case would be the centerpiece, but now it represented something much larger than family drama. It was proof of medical innovation that Jessica had tried to suppress. I stood at the podium, looking out at an audience filled with colleagues, administrators, researchers, and medical students. In the third row, I spotted Jessica sitting next to our parents, her face arranged in what I recognized as her concerned sister expression. She'd come expecting to witness my professional embarrassment, maybe even hoping her ethics complaints would surface during the presentation. Instead, she was about to watch me receive the recognition she'd spent months trying to undermine. Today, I want to share a case study that demonstrates how innovative therapeutic approaches can achieve outcomes that traditional methods alone cannot. I began clicking to my first slide showing Emma's initial X-rays. This involves a 4-year-old patient with compound fractures, hip displacement, and severe soft tissue damage, who achieved full mobility recovery within 8 months. The presentation was flawless. Before and after assessments, detailed therapy logs, outcome measurements that clearly established my method's effectiveness, video documentation of Emma's progress from wheelchair dependency to full athletic activity, professional validation from colleagues who'd observed the techniques firsthand. The audience was riveted. I could see administrators taking notes, colleagues leaning forward to catch every detail, medical students recording on their phones for later review. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. A standing ovation from Denver's pediatric medical community, validation of everything I'd worked to achieve. But I wasn't finished. During the Q&A period, Dr. Martinez from Children's Hospital Colorado stood up. Dr. Thompson, can you speak to the role of family support in achieving these remarkable outcomes? The question was perfect, exactly what I'd hoped someone would ask. That's an excellent question, I replied, reaching for my laptop. Family support is indeed crucial to pediatric recovery. However, I think it's important that medical professionals understand when family involvement becomes counterproductive to patient care. I clicked to a new slide, unauthorized interference in medical treatment. Colorado is a one-party consent state, which means I can legally record my own phone conversations. When family dynamics began interfering with this patient's care, I documented those interactions to protect the integrity of the treatment process. The audience shifted forward, sensing something significant was about to unfold. I played the first recording. Jessica's voice came through the conference speakers with crystal clarity. Nancy's getting too much credit for this. People keep asking about her special techniques, like she's some kind of miracle worker. I don't want Nancy turning Emma's trauma into her career breakthrough. A murmur rippled through the audience. In the third row, Jessica's face went white. The second recording was even more damaging. Jessica speaking to Dr. Rodriguez, suggesting that my techniques were unproven and that Emma's recovery was better attributed to natural healing and family support. Medical professionals, I continued, need to be aware that non-medical family members sometimes attempt to undermine evidence-based treatment to control narrative ownership of patient outcomes. The audience was completely silent now, absorbing the implications of what they were hearing. Then Sarah Mitchell stepped forward from the side of the auditorium where she'd been waiting with Dr. Williams. Dr. Thompson, may I present additional evidence to support your concerns about family interference? Sarah approached the podium with a box of documentation. I've been investigating claims made by this patient's mother that contradict clinical evidence. The mother contacted multiple medical professionals to undermine confidence in Dr. Thompson's methods. She began reading from Jessica's communications, emails where Jessica positioned herself as someone who saw through my attention-seeking behavior, phone calls where she suggested my methods were unnecessarily aggressive, blog posts claiming that parental love was more effective than specialized medical intervention. The hospital administration officials in the front row were taking urgent notes. They were realizing they had a non-medical person actively sabotaging their staff's professional reputation and potentially endangering other patients' care decisions. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the medical ethicist I'd consulted, stood up from the audience. May I address the ethical implications of this case? The documentation Dr. Thompson and Ms. Mitchell have presented represents a clear pattern of medical interference, a non-medical individual systematically undermining evidence-based treatment protocols and spreading misinformation about pediatric care standards. She gestured to the screen where Jessica's blog posts were now displayed. This individual has been advising other parents to question their children's prescribed therapies, potentially endangering patient welfare across multiple cases. Dr. Stevens, the hospital's chief administrator, stood up immediately. Dr. Thompson, I'm directing that Jessica Thompson be banned from all Denver Health medical facilities pending a full investigation into medical interference. The room erupted in whispers as medical professionals absorbed what they had just witnessed. I could see colleagues turning to each other, realizing they'd watched something unprecedented, a systematic expose of family sabotage that had professional and legal implications. Standing at the podium as the audience filed out, many stopping to congratulate me on both the presentation and the courage to expose professional sabotage, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete vindication.
But the consequences were just beginning, and I learned about them piece by piece over the following weeks. Sarah called me the next morning with news that the Colorado State Medical Board had already launched an investigation into Jessica's unauthorized medical advice. They're taking this seriously, she said. Practicing medicine without a license carries real penalties. 2 days later, I started getting phone calls from families of my other patients. They'd heard about the conference presentation and wanted to know if Jessica had contacted them too. Parent after parent confirmed that Jessica had reached out, subtly questioning whether their children really needed the specialized therapies I'd recommended. "I almost pulled Anne out of therapy because of what your sister said," one mother told me. "She made it sound like you were just trying to create more work for yourself." Within a week, these families had filed formal complaints with the hospital's patient advocacy office. They felt manipulated by someone with no medical training who'd presented herself as having insider knowledge about their children's care. Dr. Stevens called me into his office a week after the conference. "Dr. Thompson, the hospital board has voted to formally adopt your techniques as part of our standard pediatric trauma protocols. Your presentation has prompted 3 other hospitals to request training programs." The recognition I'd worked toward for years was finally happening, but it felt surreal after months of Jessica's sabotage. Then came the personal consequences that I learned about through a series of difficult phone calls. Sarah texted me first. "Jessica lost her job. It's all over social media." When I called for details, Sarah explained that Jessica's marketing company had terminated her employment after the medical board investigation became public. They're citing potential liability concerns. Her company works with healthcare clients. They can't have an employee under investigation for medical misinformation. The news about Jessica's divorce came through Tom directly. He called me a week later, his voice strained. "Nancy, I need you to know I had no idea what Jessica was doing to you. When I heard those recordings, when I learned she'd been lying about the accident," his voice broke. "I can't stay married to someone who would sabotage the person who saved my daughter." Dad called me the following week, sounding older than I'd ever heard him. His engineering firm worked closely with several Denver hospitals, and Jessica's scandal was affecting his professional relationships. "My colleagues are asking questions about our family," he said quietly. "How we raised someone who would undermine pediatric medical care. Nancy, I'm sorry. We should have supported you instead of Jessica." It was the first time either of my parents had acknowledged their role in the family dynamics that had allowed Jessica's behavior to escalate. The final piece of vindication came when Dr. Walsh sent me copies of Emma's complete therapy records, which had become part of the public evidence file. The clinical documentation clearly showed that Jessica's claims about natural healing and parental love healing severe trauma were medically impossible. Emma's injuries had been severe enough that without the specialized interventions Jessica had tried to minimize, she would likely never have walked normally again. Over the following month, I watched Jessica's carefully constructed life collapse entirely. Her blog was flagged by medical misinformation watchdogs and removed from its hosting platform. Her social media accounts, once full of confident parenting advice, went silent. But I knew there was still one more revelation coming, one that would destroy the last piece of sympathy anyone might have had for her protective mothering narrative. But Jessica thought destroying my professional reputation would be consequence-free. She had no idea that the recordings contained one more secret, proof that she'd been lying about Emma's accident itself, and that revelation would destroy the last piece of sympathy anyone might have had for her protective mothering narrative.
The investigation into Jessica's medical interference led to discoveries that went far beyond professional sabotage. Dr. Walsh's medical ethics review required examining all aspects of Emma's case, including the circumstances of the original accident. That's when investigators found the recording that changed everything. It was a conversation between Jessica and our mother from 3 days after Emma's accident, when Jessica was still processing the trauma and hadn't yet crafted her public narrative about being a vigilant mother whose child was struck despite her careful supervision. "I can't stop thinking about those 5 minutes," Jessica's voice came through clearly on the recording. "I was checking Instagram and Emma was playing right next to me. I thought she was safe in the yard." "You couldn't have known she'd run into the street," Mom's voice replied. "But I should have been watching. I was looking at photos from Sarah's vacation instead of watching my daughter. If I hadn't been on my phone, Emma would never have been hit." The recording continued with Jessica asking Mom to help her frame the story so that people understand it wasn't negligence, just a tragic accident that could happen to anyone. We need to emphasize that you were supervising appropriately. No one needs to know about the phone. This directly contradicted every public statement Jessica had made about the accident. She told reporters, medical staff, and everyone in our family that she'd been watching Emma carefully when the child suddenly darted into the street, despite proper supervision. The truth was that Jessica had been distracted by social media while her 4-year-old played unsupervised near a busy road. The revelation destroyed the foundation of Jessica's entire narrative. She hadn't been the vigilant mother whose child was struck by unforeseeable tragedy. She'd been the negligent parent whose inattention caused her daughter's injuries. More importantly, it revealed the psychological motivation behind her campaign against me. Jessica's entire attack on my professional reputation had been driven by guilt over her own responsibility for Emma's accident. Unable to face the fact that her negligence had nearly cost Emma the ability to walk, Jessica had tried to minimize the severity of Emma's injuries and the importance of my intervention. If Emma's recovery was due to natural healing and parental love rather than specialized medical treatment, then the injuries Jessica's negligence caused weren't really that serious. By undermining my professional contribution, Jessica was trying to rewrite history to make herself feel less culpable for her daughter's trauma. The custody evaluation that followed was swift and decisive. Emma was placed in the primary care of her father, Tom, with Jessica receiving only supervised visitation, pending completion of parenting classes and counseling. Tom filed for divorce within 2 weeks of the investigation's findings. He'd been completely unaware of Jessica's deception about the accident's circumstances and was horrified to learn that his wife had lied about the cause of their daughter's injuries while simultaneously sabotaging the medical professional who'd saved Emma's mobility. Jessica lost her apartment when she couldn't make rent without her marketing job income. She was forced to move back into our parents' house, unemployed, and facing potential legal action for practicing medicine without a license. The Colorado State Medical Board's investigation resulted in formal charges and a permanent injunction preventing Jessica from providing any medical advice or interfering with patient care. The charges carried potential criminal penalties if she violated the injunction. Meanwhile, my professional life was transformed in ways I'd never imagined possible. Denver Children's Hospital formally adopted my innovative techniques as part of their standard pediatric trauma protocol. The hospital system provided funding for me to develop training materials and establish a certification program for therapists wanting to learn the methods. The National Institutes of Health awarded me a research grant to study applications of my techniques across different types of pediatric injuries. Medical schools began incorporating Emma's case study into their curriculum as an example of breakthrough therapeutic intervention. I was invited to train therapists at hospitals across the country, spreading techniques that could help thousands of children achieve better recovery outcomes than traditional methods alone could provide. Most importantly, I established the Emma Powell Foundation, using my original last name to honor both Emma and distance the organization from Jessica's sabotage. The foundation provides free, specialized pediatric therapy for low-income families who can't afford innovative treatments. Emma became the foundation's poster child, not as a victim of accident and family drama, but as proof that dedicated medical intervention combined with family support can achieve remarkable recoveries. Jessica's attempt to minimize my role in Emma's healing had backfired completely. Now Emma's case was recognized nationally as a testament to the power of specialized therapeutic techniques. My relationship with Alex deepened as I learned to set healthy boundaries with my family of origin. Instead of constantly sacrificing our plans for family emergencies, I started prioritizing our relationship and my own well-being. Alex had watched me transform from someone who sought approval through service into someone who commanded respect through professional achievement. We moved forward with wedding planning on our own timeline, creating celebrations that reflected our values rather than accommodating family drama. The guest list included colleagues who respected my work and friends who supported our relationship, with family members invited based on their ability to celebrate rather than criticize our choices. I maintained a relationship with Emma, but as her aunt rather than her substitute parent. Tom was grateful for my continued involvement in Emma's care, and Emma thrived with clear boundaries around adult responsibilities. She understood that Aunt Nancy was the doctor who'd helped her walk again, and that was enough. The deeper victory was personal rather than professional. I realized that I didn't need to be the family fixer to have value. My worth wasn't determined by how much I sacrificed for others or how successfully I managed family dysfunction. Stepping away from toxic family dynamics hadn't just preserved my sanity, it had opened space for unprecedented personal and professional achievement. The energy I'd been pouring into managing Jessica's emotions and meeting our parents' expectations was redirected toward medical innovation and meaningful relationships. 6 months after the investigation concluded, I received a letter from a mother whose child had been treated using my techniques at a hospital in Oregon. Her daughter had achieved full recovery from injuries similar to Emma's, and she wanted to thank me for developing methods that had saved her family from a lifetime of disability. Reading that letter, I understood that Jessica's sabotage had actually strengthened my resolve and expanded my impact. Her attempt to contain my success had forced me to document and formalize my methods in ways that made them accessible to medical professionals nationwide. Emma's recovery had become bigger than one family's story. It was now a model that was helping children across the country, exactly as it should have been from the beginning.
Looking back 2 years later, I sometimes question whether exposing Jessica's lies about Emma's accident crossed a line I shouldn't have crossed. The revelation didn't just destroy her professional sabotage campaign, it ended her marriage, cost her custody of her daughter, and reduced her to living with our parents at 31 years old. Did Jessica deserve complete personal destruction, or would stopping her professional interference have been justice enough? The truth is, I'm still wrestling with this question. When I discovered those recordings, I had a choice about what to reveal. I could have focused solely on her medical misinformation and professional sabotage without exposing the accident's circumstances that motivated her behavior. But here's what I keep coming back to. Jessica's lies about the accident weren't just personal deception. They were part of her campaign to undermine life-saving medical techniques. By claiming Emma's injuries weren't severe enough to require specialized intervention, Jessica was telling other parents that their children might not need the treatment their doctors recommended. Kids could have been hurt by her misinformation. Parents might have delayed or refused therapy based on Jessica's false narrative about natural healing conquering serious trauma. Was I seeking justice for professional sabotage or revenge for years of personal exclusion and manipulation? Honestly, probably both. Jessica's exclusion from family events was cruel, but her systematic campaign to destroy my professional reputation while benefiting from my expertise crossed into territory that demanded a response. The deeper question is whether understanding Jessica's motivation should have changed how I defended myself. Her behavior stemmed from guilt over endangering Emma through her own negligence. In some ways, she was a parent struggling with unbearable guilt who chose to attack others rather than face her own responsibility. Does that psychological context excuse actively sabotaging medical care that could help other children? I don't think it does. Jessica made a choice to deal with her guilt by undermining my work instead of seeking therapy or taking responsibility for her mistakes. She could have used her platform as Emma's mother to advocate for better pediatric care.
Instead, she chose to spread misinformation that could have endangered other children's recovery outcomes. Still, the scope of the consequences sometimes surprises me. I wanted to protect my professional reputation and ensure my techniques could help other families. I didn't necessarily set out to destroy Jessica's entire life, but once the investigation started, it took on its own momentum. The recordings revealed not just her sabotage, but her lies about the accident, her manipulation of medical professionals, and her willingness to endanger patient care for personal emotional relief. Each revelation led to consequences I hadn't anticipated. Here's what I want to ask you, and I want you to be completely honest. If a family member was actively sabotaging your career while benefiting from your expertise, how would you respond? Would you expose them publicly through professional channels, or try to handle it privately within the family? And here's the harder question. Should family loyalty protect someone who's actively undermining your life's work? Jessica wasn't just being unsupportive. She was telling medical professionals that my techniques were unnecessary and potentially harmful. She was advising other parents to question treatments their children needed. When does standing up for yourself cross the line into destruction of others? I exposed Jessica's lies because they were endangering patient care, but I can't pretend I didn't feel satisfaction watching her face consequences for years of manipulation and exclusion. Would you have stopped after proving the professional sabotage, or would you have revealed everything like I did? Does understanding someone's psychological motivation change how far you should go in defending yourself from their attacks? These questions matter beyond just family drama. We're seeing more cases of non-medical people spreading health misinformation, often motivated by personal psychological needs rather than actual concern for patient welfare. How do we balance compassion for people's emotional struggles with protection of evidence-based medical care? Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and professional integrity? How did you handle it? Where would you draw the line between self-defense and revenge? And if you've dealt with family members who take credit for your achievements while simultaneously undermining your success, I want to hear how you navigated that situation. Did you confront it directly or try to manage it quietly? Emma is thriving now, using techniques that are helping kids across the country recover from serious injuries. The Emma Hartwell Foundation has provided free therapy to over 200 families who couldn't afford specialized treatment. Jessica tried to erase my contribution to her daughter's recovery, but she actually helped me realize that my work has value far beyond family approval. Sometimes the people who try to diminish you end up proving just how powerful you really are. The irony is perfect. Jessica's campaign to minimize my professional impact forced me to document and formalize my techniques in ways that made them accessible to medical professionals nationwide. Her sabotage became the catalyst for expanding my reach beyond anything I could have achieved without that opposition. But that doesn't mean the cost wasn't real, for both of us. Jessica lost her family, her career, and her community standing. I lost the illusion blood relations automatically create loyalty and support. Maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes protecting what you've built requires accepting that some relationships can't be salvaged, and that defending your life's work might mean letting go of people who see your success as their failure. The techniques that saved Emma's mobility are now helping children I'll never meet in hospitals across the country. That impact matters more than any family drama, but it doesn't mean the personal costs weren't insignificant. What would you have done? I read every comment, and I genuinely want to know if you think I went too far or if standing up to family sabotage requires exactly this kind of response.